In this segment, we will be discussing specifically the causes of the Civil War and the mounting sectional tensions and the failure of political leaders that led to the conflict that we call the Civil War. We can begin with our sectional debates. The issue of tariffs, as many Southerners opposed tariffs, claiming it as a form of economic imperialism and passed by the North. The extension of slavery. Many Southerners supported the extension of slavery as a means of protecting economic interests. And states' rights. Many Southerners believing that the central government was exercising too much power and the states had the right to nullify or cancel out a law if it harmed a state. The Northern abolitionists contested the Southern defenders of slavery. Many Northerners opposed slavery on moral reasons. They said that the slave-based agricultural system of the South did not seem modern and a backwards way of doing things. Southerners, on the other hand, believed that slavery was necessary, and it might be evil, but a necessary evil for large-scale agricultural economy. They pointed to the hypocrisy of the Northerners who said, look at the way your workers are living versus the way our slaves were living, which, by the way, living conditions for most Northerners much more harsh than living conditions for Southern slaves. And this was their key arguments, a necessary evil that the North is benefiting from versus it is immoral and unmodern. The Dred Scott decision we have discussed in a previous module. It goes to Dred Scott, who sued for his independence. He sued for his rights to be free. And the Dred Scott decision by the Supreme Court overturned the efforts to limit the spread of slavery, declaring the Missouri Compromise unconstitutional. And it again said that no black man, free or slave, was a citizen and therefore was only property. The Missouri Compromise line that was literally done away with based on this Dred Scott decision, Northerners completely outraged. Abraham Lincoln referred to this woman as the little lady who started the war. This is Harriet Beecher Stowe, the wife of a New England clergyman. She wrote a very famous novel called Uncle Tom's Cabin. It became best-selling. It inflamed Northern sentiment for abolition. Southerners were a little bit intimidated by this novel, and they were intimidated by the growing number of abolitionists. Harriet Beecher Stowe, with this fictitious novel, really inflamed those desires. And the book itself was based entirely on stereotypes. Harriet Beecher Stowe had never actually been to a plantation. She had only heard stories of people, and she came up with this piece of fiction. But it did outrage enough Northerners, and it was convincing enough that this was the way things were, and Southerners detested Harriet Beecher Stowe. There was also ineffective political leadership of the 1850s. Yes, we have several compromises that occur, but we can start with 1849 with Zachary Taylor. He was the second president to die from illness in office while in the White House. His nickname was Old Rough and Ready, and that was due to his, well, he was a sloppy dresser. He was the first Mexican-American war hero to be elected president, but he was the first president that was never in office before being president. So this guy came in with no political experience, and, well, he died. He was replaced by his vice president, Millard Fillmore, who finished out the presidency. He was president from 1850 to 1853. His claim to fame, he signed the Compromise of 1850. Other than that, not much. He was not even renominated by his political party to run again for office. The next president was Franklin Pierce, who served from 1853 to 1857. His claim to fame was the Gadsden Purchase, a chunk of land that was purchased from Mexico to help complete the Transcontinental Railroad. Other than that, Franklin Pierce stayed out of sectional conflict and thought that taking a more neutral line would be the best. James Buchanan was the president when things went bad fast. He was president from 1857 until 1861. He also, like Franklin Pierce, tried to stay out of the sectional conflicts and not taking too strong of a stand. However, he was president when South Carolina seceded, when South Carolina left the Union. James Buchanan believed that it was not his role to step in and intercede, that the next guy could have that honor. That next guy was, of course, Abraham Lincoln. Again, the failed compromises, the Compromise of 1820, merely postponed the inevitable, as did the Compromise of 1850, where California became a free state, but the Utah Territory and the New Mexico Territory were left to popular sovereignty, where slave trade, but not slavery, is abolished in Washington, D.C., and we have the strict fugitive slave laws. And then, of course, there was Stephen Douglas's Kansas-Nebraska Act, which was supposed to bring peace. Instead, it brought bleeding Kansas, as popular sovereignty was decreed in the Kansas and Nebraska territories. President Lincoln was left to clean up the mess. In 1860, Lincoln runs for election. He promised not to end slavery where it already existed. Repeatedly, he said, "It is not my job to abolish slavery." Abraham Lincoln was not an abolitionist, but he did insist that he was opposed to the expansion of slavery. South Carolina was not going to wait. Even though Abraham Lincoln promised, and even though Abraham Lincoln had not even taken office yet, South Carolina and the Deep South seceded from the Union. That is, left the United States of America. They formed their own country, declared independence, calling themselves the Confederate States of America. And these states included South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and Texas. Again, the Deep South. What they had in common was King Cotton. These were all the leading cotton-producing states in the United States, those who would be affected the most by the abolition of slavery, those who would be affected the most by high tariffs. Well, when shots were fired, Abraham Lincoln had to call the troops out. And in 1861, the conflict was here.